and welcome to Myth Monsters. My name is Erin and I'll be your host for these little snack bite-sized podcasts on folklore and mythical monsters from around the world. These podcasts focus on the actual cryptids, folklore and mythic monsters from global mythology, rather than focusing on the full stories of heroes and their big adventures. I'll also be dropping in some references that they have to recent culture and where you can see these represented in modern day content so that you can learn more and get as obsessed as I am about these absolute legends of the mythological world. And I'm back. I'm sorry for the slight delay in my return. The US aircon ruins my lungs and it makes me so unwell, so I got AC flu, I was really jet lagged, although I promise you that AC was needed in May, Florida heat and humidity. It was baking, but I had a wonderful time and caught the opening of Epic Universe, which was awesome. I highly recommend getting out there in the autumn months for it if you can. It's really, really good. I really enjoyed myself. And I love theme parks, so easy one. But this week, we're heading back over to the US, to the West Coast this time, for something a little spookier than Mickey Mouse, who does also live in this state too. We are specifically going to the county of Fresno, California, for a namesake monster, the Fresno Nightcrawlers. This one was recommended to me on Spotify by the Rebel Saint, so thank you so much for your recommendation. Here's your episode on them. I hope you enjoy. The Fresno Nightcrawlers are described as a humanoid being, but made up of only extremely long, thin white legs, which make up most of its body. They have no discernible head or upper torso, as well as a lack of arms or face, but they do have two small black eyes at the top of this legged mass. There are some reports that it has a wider mass at the top of the legs, assumed to be a brain or a head. However, it's debated within the community that it is either of those things, more like a hip. They are completely sheet white or light grey, and seem to have a soft, fabric-like skin, which makes them look slightly ghostly, like the ghost sheets you'd see people wearing at Halloween. I say long legs because their body is mostly legs, however they're relatively small, only coming up to about 3 to 5 feet in height. Obviously, if it had a torso and a head, it would be quite a tall being, but alas, there is no upper torso to be seen. They walk with, what I can only say is style, but with a creepy gait, and are sometimes seen almost gliding or swaying as they step, which gives them an almost ethereal feel. Now, their name does give you a clue as to where they live, and that's in Fresno, a county in the middle of California in the USA. They have only ever been seen in wooded areas, but ones around human habitation. Although no one has ever seen one in person, they have only ever been captured using video footage, just like our good girl and favourite UK cryptid, Nessie. They have been spotted in other counties in Cali, even in Yosemite National Park, but also in Montana, Ohio and Indiana, as well as abroad in countries like Poland. Fresno Nightcrawlers only go around in pairs, and one is usually bigger than the other, with some believing that they travel in pods of parent and child, or in a dual gender pair. They also appear to wear clothes, with seemingly bell-bottom trousers whipping around their legs in video footage of them. But we're again not sure if this is a trick of the camera, but either way they are fabulous. So much so that they are often mistaken for walking pants or ghostly beings, but according to reports are very much real-life walking boys. We don't believe that the Fresno Nightcrawlers have any powers other than surviving, as it seems, just as a pair of legs, and they don't seem massively interested in humans or creating any issues. The thought across the board is that they are a peaceful race of some kind and are observing the world rather than attempting any hostility. Of course, we don't know what they eat, how they reproduce, or how they die because of this. We actually know very, very little about them, but we do know a bit about their history, so let's get into that. Now, in terms of etymology, I think you know what I'm going to say, because I don't know what to tell you. It's pretty self-explanatory. They're from Fresno, and they go out at night, and they walk, so I guess that makes them crawlers. I don't know what else to say. That's about it. For their history, though, it is not surprising a very recent monster, younger than me, and younger than I imagine most of you listeners are as well, would have very little history to touch on. But the first report of the Fresno Nightcrawlers was actually in 2007, so not even 20 years ago, over in Fresno, by a man called Jose. Jose was woken up one night after his dogs were barking, and he went out to check his surveillance footage of his front garden, where he saw the Forspoken Nightcrawlers. He woke his brother up to rewatch the footage, and they went out to investigate, where they found small footprints. They called investigators, but by the time they made it to the house, all of the evidence had washed away. And unfortunately, after this, the original CCTV footage was lost, and now the only remaining footage is a very grainy video recorded from a monitor. This started the craze around this monster, and from then on, there were a bunch of other sightings, including one in Yosemite in California, the very famous Yosemite National Park. And in 2011, workers in the park installed cameras, and this was to catch vandals who have recently been up to their tricks. However, by accident, they caught two creatures strolling through their merry way in the park. They were around 1/2 metre tall, and they had very clearly defined feet and knees. And there is footage of both of these incidents I've mentioned so far on YouTube that you can go and watch. It is a bit spooky, so just a warning to younger listeners or ones who get frightened by CCTV spooky things like me. It is a bit scary. It's not crazy scary. I recommend looking into it if you're interested in that kind of thing. Lastly, in 2004, in Indiana, this monster was spotted by a 17-year-old who was driving past it at the time and caught a glimpse of it in his rearview mirror. However, big difference here is that the monster was over 6 foot tall, and as he saw it, another couple drove past going the other way, who also saw it. They both pulled over down the road and discussed what they'd just seen, and they agreed to escort each other out of the area for safety and realised together that it was not human, but they didn't know what it was. The latest sighting was in Montana in 2020, which was captured on home CCTV and is also on YouTube, but they're just kind of walking past a wooded area. I would say this one potentially is the easiest to spot as a little bit hoaxy from just a glimpse at it. It feels like it's superimposed, but I can't make that decision. People believe it's real. Whatever, maybe it is. Now, what is the explanation behind them? Well, I've kind of mentioned it just there. There are a couple of thoughts, but the easiest one is that this is a hoax. The fact that no one has seen them in person, without being in a moving vehicle or watching them on CCTV, is quite suspicious. But also, they could just be people pretending to be a monster to create a monster. There is a rumour that the original video from 2007 was admittedly a hoax. However, there's very little evidence, bar some guy on Reddit saying he heard it from Jose himself. There have, however, been people caught dressing up as these monsters, creating these pant ghosts or artificially inserting themselves with Photoshop into videos, creating puppets with clothes. So it is a tricky one to determine. It was investigated by 2 paranormal/sci-fi TV shows in the US recently. However, they both found that they weren't able to replicate the videos, and so they left it as unsolved for now. The other explanations are that they are aliens who have been sent down to scout or to seek peace. However, there's also mutant humans thrown around or a completely new species of Homo sapien. But I will say that they could also potentially just be a deer on its hind legs. If you have a look at a picture of a deer on its hind legs in the dark, you can see where I'm coming from. I don't want to kill the moment for you if you believe on it, but it could potentially be that. The last thought is that it could be related to a Native American belief that there is apparently a possibility that they could be a monster from way back when, way before Fresno was even a thing. According to local tribe members, Nightcrawlers have always been here, and they have long legs to help them move through swampy landscapes as they come from a swamp world. They are apparently in Fresno to rebuild the connection from human beings to the natural world, but I will say they're not doing the best job if that is what they're here to do. There are also a few statues of long-legged creatures that popped up all over California carved out of wood, and no one quite knows who carved them or what they depict. However, we're also not sure if they have any connection to the Nightcrawlers either, but they do have an eerie similarity in the leg length. They do also have heads. Have a look at the images of them, they're quite creepy. I would hate to see them in the dark. We do have two similar monsters though. One being immensely similar, so much so that I'm not even going to cover them in their own episode. This is the Carmel area creature, which is from Carmel in Ohio, USA. It's not caramel, by the way, there's no extra A, it's Carmel. And it is reportedly a grey-skinned, long-legged monster, but who has more of a defined head and upper torso, but no arms and backwards-facing knees. As well as having 3 toe claws like a raptor, they also have a clearly defined rib cage and glowing white eyes. These are much taller, at least 7 feet tall, and only one official sighting from an elderly couple has ever been reported. They saw one in their garden creating a crop circle, and then they ran across the road and into the woods. I will note that this one is thought to be some type of stork or crane, just to debunk this as well for funsies. Now I will say, the only other monster I can think of with this one is the one and only Slender Man. Used to living in the woods, capturing children and killing everything with its dark tentacles, it's a tall, no-face, white-skinned monster who stalks the forest. So it does match a few criteria, bar the violence. However, Slender Man is most definitely a creature of fiction. It's been proven, and he is incredibly violent in comparison to the very chill Fresno Night Stalkers. And if you want to check out my episode on him for more information, you want to learn more, go get spooked. I've got one a few years ago I covered him, and it was a really good one, if I do say so myself. Mainly because I'm really scared of Slender Man, so I think I got my fear across. I will say that the Fresno Nightcrawler is massively embraced in the local community. You can buy merchandise off him, including t-shirts and plushies, and is often just called a pair of pants out for a walk, which makes him super popular and super unproblematic. You sissy that walk, Queen, but he's a personal favourite of mine, I really love him. Now, sissy that walk over to modern media. Now, as you can imagine, there is absolutely nothing on these monsters, mainly because they're so modern. And because there's also the idea that they are a hoax, it kind of creates a weird position within the media. But I'll tell you what has been around for a long time. The idea of sentient clothes. And so, here's a bunch of stuff you can have fun with in this topic. I hope you feel like this is a fun one. This is more of a fun one. There's nothing like these monsters. I can tell you more Slender Man ones, but there's a whole Slender Man episode. So, I think the only thing that fits is either aliens, which is way too broad, or sentient clothes. And I think sentient clothes is just something we will never ever cover again, and I think it's funny. So, here's a bunch of sentient clothes media. For art though, this is different. Because of the age of this monster, there's nothing portrait art wise. However, there's loads of independent stuff, and people really love this monster in a scary way, but also in quite a cute way. I found an amazing cryptid artist this week in Sam Sheeran, so have a look at his work on Instagram under Mr. Sam Sheeran, and that's Sheeran Shearon, for some amazing modern monster art. But generally, for this monster, have a look on your Instagrams, on your DeviantArts, there are some really good ones this week. In movies, onto our sentient clothes, we have Legend, My Favourite Martian, Star Kid, Bedknobs and Broomsticks, Doctor Strange, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and Slacks. I will note that the last one is a horror film about a sentient pair of jeans that try to kill people. So if you're into that, that's your movie. It is B-side, I will stress. For TV, we have Fact or Faked Paranormal Sightings. This is where it was looked into, by the way, it's one of those TV shows. iCarly, Read Along, Lazy Town, Lidsville, Arthur, Johnny Test, My Life as a Teenage Robot, Goof Troop, Phineas and Ferb, SpongeBob SquarePants, Dexter's Laboratory, Betty Boop, The Owl House, Steven Universe, Summer Camp Island, My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, Max Steel, The Simpsons, Uncle Grandpa, Jackie Chan Adventures, The Adventures of Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius, Camp Lake Bottom, Darkwing Duck, and classic Disney shorts. In video games, we have ones such as Fallout New Vegas, Dragon Age Origins Awakening, Shipwrecked, Monster Party, Ghostbusters the video game, Super Mario Odyssey, Fallen London, Infinity Nikki, Mega Man ZX, Spectrobes, Wonder Boy 3, Monster Lair, Flash of the Blade, and the new Date Everything. My book recommendation this week is The United States of Cryptids, A Tour of American Myths and Monsters by J.W. Ocker for a general wide US cryptid summary, or A Guide to California's Cryptids, Mythical Legends of American Creatures by Asher Martin for some more specific Californian monsters if you're either from this part of the world or you're really into it. But now it's time for Do I Think They Existed? No. I'm sorry. I don't know how I can make this any more clear throughout the whole episode. I do not think this one is real. I think they are a hoax. Now, don't get me wrong, I really love them, and I think for some reason they're actually quite cute. However, definitely not real. And whilst I am not an expert by any means on Photoshop or video editing software, I imagine it's quite hard to create these. But honestly, I'm impressed at how convincing the videos are. I also don't like the videos, let me make this clear. I think they look scary, when in other images, I think they look quite harmless. Especially in art, people make them look so cute. Hear me out though, I think the cryptid community likes stuff like this, where it is plausible enough of an explanation to keep the myth going, and I think that's valid. And it's why cryptids are there in the first place, and why the debate around any of their existence is a thing, which brings more attention to the topic, which I really like as a folklorist. So keep them coming, is all I have to say. If you can make them well enough where people still believe it, you've done a great job. My final words are that they are cute, and no one can tell me different, except the video footage people. I will also say that I have never been to Fresno, California, but I have been to Anaheim, California, and the one thing I think about when I think of Fresno is the movie Monsters vs. Aliens, and I hope you've all seen it. It's an absolute classic DreamWorks film, but they move to Fresno and they make such a thing about Fresno being a really weird place to move to. I'm sure it's very nice, but now I'm like, well, there are these Nightcrawlers there, so maybe it's not that nice. But if you're from Fresno, tell me about it. Let me know if Fresno's crazy. Anyway, what do you think? Do you think the Fresno Nightcrawlers roam the Californian wilds? Let me know on social media so that we can converse about this, because I think they're very funny, and I really do appreciate their sassy walking. Anyway, I loved covering this one, as I do with all of our cryptids, but this one is especially fun. I like the idea that people see these harmless walkers in the wilderness, but I also would not want to see one myself either, unless it was a statue or a walking pair of trousers. Either way, these are a solid favourite in my book now. Next week, we're heading over to a beast known in 3 different countries, Japan, China and Korea, so come with me for a mystical unicorn-like monster and visit the wonderful Kirin, or Killin, next week with me. For now though, thank you so much for listening. It's been an absolute pleasure. If you enjoyed this podcast, please give it a rating on the service you are listening on. I've got loads of social media for any questions or suggestions on what monsters to cover next, and I do cover all suggestions eventually, and I'd love to hear from you. The social media handles for TikTok, YouTube, Instagram are Myth Monsters Podcast, and that our Twitter is under Myth Monsters Pod, but I'm also now on Blue Sky under Myth Monsters. But all of our content can be found at mythmonsters.co.uk, and you can find us on Good Pods, Buy Me a Coffee and Patreon if you want to help me fund the podcast too. Come join the fun though, share this with your pals, they might love me as much as you do. But for now, stay spooky, and I'll see you later, babes.